G'day, ZiggyD here, back with another Diablo 3 guide. As you guys probably know, over the past couple days I've been doing some hardcore ladder practice on Demon Hunter, and in doing so I've also been reacquainting myself with the class and leveling the class and the different skills and builds and things like that you can level up with. I actually get the question pretty often of what builds to use for leveling, and it's a pretty organic approach, so this is not going to be a typical build guide. I'm not just going to tell you one build, because you unlock skills as you go, and depending on the situation you'll actually change your skill set. But I will break it down into skills that are really good for leveling on a Demon Hunter on hardcore. This will work on softcore as well, but this is mostly a hardcore oriented setup. In softcore you can kind of throw together whatever and you'll have a pretty good time with it. So let's start off by saying that in the description below you guys will see this table just here. If you want to just get like the core skills, you can just simply click on this in the description below and you'll get the list of skills essentially. But I'll go through in the video here and I'll sort of explain it for you guys as well. So let's start off with the core setup. No matter which build you're playing as a Demon Hunter, you should be running these skills or some variation of these skills. Try and run all of them. So the first one is Vault. Vault is fantastic for leveling. It's great for mobility. While leveling, it'll get you out of things like Jailer, it'll get you out of bad situations. If you use it correctly, it'll help you avoid Frozen and in any of the other number of things that are going to kill you. It's your main survivability skill, and it's also your main movement skill for getting through the campaign quickly and getting to bounties quickly, which is primarily the method we're going to be using to level up, is doing these bounties. Now for Vault, I like to use Rattling Roll in hardcore, which gives you a 1.5 second stun. That's a guaranteed stun. It works on bosses fantastically. Whenever you see a monster about to use an ability or a boss about to use an ability, unless they have some sort of special status at that point where they can avoid stuns, which that happens in some rare cases, most of the time you'll be able to stun them and prevent that from happening. And it gives you a huge boost in survivability. And it's also great for when you are trapped. When you do vault through enemies, you'll knock them back and stun them, getting you out of danger and into safety, essentially. The other one to do is Tumble. If you're not too worried about the survivability side of things, or you feel pretty tanky or something like that, or you don't want to run Rattling Roll, you can simply run Tumble, which gives you basically more vaults. It's every second one has its cost reduced by 50%. So essentially, the strategy for using Vault in general is to use it pretty liberally, but to always leave a bit of discipline left over. You don't want to get yourself into a bad situation. So what I'll do is I'll vault around, and I'll be running, taking advantage of tactical advantage, which I'll go over in a second. And when I'm gonna get to about here, I'm gonna be a little bit more careful. I'm not gonna spend that last little bit of discipline. Now I can spend it and then simply pop preparation and get my discipline back up, but then around here I want to start being a little bit more careful in combat. So just being a little bit more cautious, because you don't want to get in a bad situation like you've gotten jailered and there's about a bunch of molten explosions about to go off on top of you. You don't want to get in that situation without discipline. Discipline's a slowly regenerating, powerful defensive resource. Keep that in mind and really focus on that. So that's how I use Vault essentially. Now I mentioned Tactical Advantage, and this is one that I think every setup should use for Demon Hunter while leveling. Tactical Advantage gives you a burst of move speed after you vault. It goes hand in hand with Vault. As you'll see, there's 2 seconds of fast move speed after vaulting. So the way I will progress around the map, so let's say if I want to, I'm starting down here, I want to get up to there as quickly as possible. What I'm going to do is I'm going to vault, I'm going to run until that wears off, and then I'm going to vault again. So run until it wears off, vault again, and you'll get pretty good at sort of just chaining those together, and maximizing the speed at which you get around the bounties and things like that, and it's going to improve your leveling speed by a great deal. Tactical Advantage also has some small survivability boosts as well, in simply being faster and being able to avoid damage is always a good thing. Move speed means less damage taken from AoE and stuff like that. Next up, we have Companion. Now, I think Companion is always a nice feature on the toolbar, and there's a few different companions you can run. Bat is a fairly good choice for most of leveling. You can use Wolf instead if you're using something like Cluster Arrow, but I think Bat probably trumps Wolf 9 times out of 10 for leveling specs. So Bat, if you're unsure what to run, just simply run Bat Companion. You get it pretty early on as well, and gives you Hatred regen, and also a boost of Hatred when you need it. So if you've used up all your skills, and you need a little bit more Hatred to do some more damage to finish something off, you can pop the Bat, giving you another boost, which is another 2 skills uses or something like that. The extra 1 Hatred regen per second as well just simply helps you keep up that DPS essentially. And then the other core skill that I recommend is actually a passive, Blood Vengeance. I recommend running this on every single spec leveling as the Demon Hunter. Gives you extra discipline and hatred whenever you pick up a health globe. Get used to spotting those health globes. Like, pay attention to when they are, where they are on the battlefield, and if you're having a bit of a prolonged fight, you see a health globe over here. Alright, keep that in mind, keep doing your fighting, you're running out of hatred, maybe you're getting a little bit low on discipline as well. Vault over, pick up the health globe, get your hatred back up, get your discipline back up, and keep going. It gives you, again, a lot more extra damage out, but also some extra survivability from the discipline, and it also makes you pay more attention to health globes, which is fantastic from a survivability and tactics point of view in combat as well. So really good one to run. I suggest running all those skills. So Vault with tactical advantage, and then Bat Companion or Wolf Companion with Blood Vengeance. Now, one thing I did miss about the Companion is a lot of people like to run Boar in hardcore. I'm definitely not against this. The Boar is a fantastic follower. It gives you a lot of extra regen, and the active ability is a taunt, so the Boar will rush in and taunt enemies. So if you're in trouble, that can be your oh shit, your panic button. So Boar isn't a bad choice either. I would run Bat, Boar, or Wolf essentially, but I think Bat probably wins out in most cases in my mind. Now here's the extra skills, because there'll usually be one wildcard slot, and that is this slot just here. Now you can run Marked for Death with Contagion. That's probably my favorite that I use most of leveling. Essentially, Marked for Death gives enemies take 20% extra damage, so 1/5 extra damage. Very powerful for killing, those larger elite packs and stuff like that much more quickly. And Contagion, you get the rune very early, and is probably one of the best for AoE. What you'll do is essentially, once you curse an enemy with Contagion, only one enemy will have the Contagion, but then you kill that enemy and it proliferates to 2 other enemies. So then 2 enemies will have it, and then it actually keeps multiplying out until the whole pack is covered, and it keeps spreading. It essentially travels with you. So the effectiveness of Contagion gets really good. All you have to do is make sure you target on one of the lower health mobs, and then kill that mob first. Try and kill that mob first, Generally, I just throw it down on a low health mob, and it gets killed by my AoE skills anyway. So you'll pop that out at the start of fight, and then start shooting, and the Contagion will spread. As an alternative, if you're not a fan of the way Contagion works and you don't want to micromanage that, you can use Valley of Death instead. You get that rune pretty early as well. And this puts a circle on the ground, so you can kind of keep the mobs in that spot, and all of the mobs in there will take an extra, I'm pretty sure it's an extra 12% damage. I think it might be 32, or it might be just 12. I think it might be 32, so it increases the damage further again, but that's also a good alternative. As another one for the wildcard, so if you don't want to use Mark for Death at all, people like to use Sentries. Any of the Sentry ones are fine, really. I like Spitfire and Aid Station and Guardian Turret the most. Those are the 3 most useful for hardcore, I think. So use Spitfire until you unlock the other ones. Sentries are nice if you find yourself in a lot of prolonged fights, or fights with elites, where you're in the area for a while, because there's a cooldown. You have to put down one, and then you have to kind of wait until you can put down the second one. This will keep firing, and it's nice for having that extra damage income, and obviously the safety of this Guardian turret there is pretty nice to have. But I find it's only useful if you're in fights for more than 20 seconds. Less than that, I find Contagion Marked for Death to be much more powerful. The other wildcard slot to use is once you get to level 61, you unlock Vengeance, and then you can start to use any of the Vengeance ones as well. So just use I pretty much recommend using the runes as they unlock. So use Personal Mortar, then use Dark Heart, then use Side Cannons until you finally get to Seethe. Seethe is the best one by far, and that's what I use these days as I was getting through the higher levels, the higher 60s. Vengeance, when you do unlock it, is pretty fantastic. So pretty much once I unlocked Vengeance, I started using that instead of Marked for Death. So those are the wildcards. We've got Sentry, Marked for Death, and Reign of Vengeance. Oh, I didn't even mention Reign of Vengeance. This is Vengeance, and then there's also Reign of Vengeance. That's why I got confused. If you want a more passive damage, you can run Reign of Vengeance, Dark Cloud. Pretty simple stuff. That's very nice. Otherwise, later on, you can get Stampede, which, it's Flying Strike, which unlocks a fair bit later on, which stuns enemies. So Reign of Vengeance with Dark Cloud or Flying Strike. So Reign of Vengeance, Vengeance, Marked for Death, or Sentry are your wildcard skills. Use whichever one you like, whichever feels most best to you in your skills setup. So what actually makes the build then? We haven't really talked about your main attacking skills. And there are a few different setups. Setup A is Entangling Shot Cluster Arrow. This is the most common set up at endgame, and is actually fantastic for leveling as well, especially if you're kind of only focusing on killing elites. The AoE is not great on it, but the damage is really, really fantastic. So what you'll run is you'll run Entangling Shot, Justice is Served, which gives you increased hatred regeneration for more cluster arrows. Then what you'll do is run Cold Awake, this passive increased damage against slowed enemies by 20%. Entangling Shot procs this. So what you'll do is you'll fire Entangling Shot, it'll entangle a few enemies together, and then that will proc Cold Awake on top of them. And then you'll fire your cluster arrow, which you can use any cluster arrow you get until you get Loaded for Bear. Loaded for Bear is the best, but it unlocks last, obviously. So you can use any of the ones before that are just fine. And then you start using Loaded for Bear. So you'll fire down a few chains, and then you'll fire some cluster arrows. And you fire some more chains, build it back up, and fire some more cluster arrows. And it's very effective. Pretty standard setup. You guys probably already know it. Now, setup B is Elemental Arrow with Frost Arrow and Hungering Arrow. So what we'll do is we'll run Hungering Arrow. I prefer Serrated Arrow here for the generation again. Puncturing Arrow is decent for extra single target damage. So either of these are okay, but I like just running Serrated Arrow and getting the extra regeneration. So we run that, and then we run Elemental Arrow, which should just be here, with Frost Arrow. This unlocks pretty early, and I actually used this for a significant portion of my leveling. Now what this does is it fires one little ice bolt, which doesn't look very impressive, but when it hits enemies, it'll split off and hit all of the other enemies behind it. So what you'll do is you'll position all of the mobs on one side of you, and you'll fire at the closest mob, and it'll spread out. Now what this does is also procs Cold Awake. So you leave the Cold Awake passive on. The cold effect slows enemies, so they take additional damage from the actual hits that you're hitting them with. So very effective setup. Pretty decent AoE as long as you're positioning well. Very nice CC because of the slowing effect that spreads out really nicely. So great setup for hardcore and does really good damage for leveling. So this is also a pretty nice setup. Again, Cold Awake, Hungering Arrow, Elemental Arrow. Setup C is Evasive Fire, Twin Chakram. I use Evasive Fire with Hardened, which instead of backflipping gives you a 25% armor boost. So this is very nice. Essentially, if you're about this close to an enemy when you fire it, you'll get a protective shell around your character that'll improve your armor and improve your tankiness. Good, tanking's good for hardcore. And then we'll run Chakram, Twin Chakram. I don't recommend using Chakram until you get Twin Chakram, and then only using Twin Chakram. And basically, you'll play this fast. This is like if you've got pretty high damage, I recommend using this spec. So if you're overgeared for your current level and the mobs you're currently fighting, I use this through the campaign run especially because it was nice and fast, really fast skills. What you'll do is you'll just throw some Chakrams out, really good AoE damage, and will absolutely shred mobs if you are pretty well geared. And Evasive Fire sort of helps you tank. What you'll do is if mobs are near you, you'll just shoot once, and that'll give you the protected bubble, giving you lots of nice extra tanking ability, and Chakram will go ahead and shred everything. So that's a really nice setup. Now for the passive for this setup, Evasive Fire Chakram, Cold Awake doesn't work, you don't have any slowing effects. So you have a few options. I think Hot Pursuit was pretty good. Archery is pretty good if you have that, otherwise Perfectionist. Those are the three I'd recommend using for that setup just there. Any of the other ones you probably won't be using in this build. So those three passives is a good setup for there. So we're looking at Evasive Fire with Hardened, we're looking at Twin Chakram, and then for the passive, Hot Pursuit, Perfectionist, or Archery are all good. And then there's setup D, which is Entangling Shot, Multi-Shot. Now this is the doing bounties quickly setup. So we'll go Entangling Shot with Justice is Served again for generation. We'll go Multi-Shot. Now I recommend Arsenal once you have it unlocked. Until then, use Fire at Will, which makes Multi-Shot a bit cheaper. But Arsenal is probably one of the best DPS ones to use. And then you'll use Cold Awake because Entangling Shot procs that. What you'll do is you'll tangle up a few mobs, and then you'll just unleash with the multi-shots. And the damage from the extra rockets and damage from the shots themselves is super effective, especially once you work in Vengeance Seed. You get a bunch of extra hatred regen, and you can basically spam these guys quite a lot and do a lot of damage. Now this setup is used pretty much for doing low difficulties, so once you get to level 65, I usually switch back to normal difficulty and start doing bounties. It's used for doing low difficulty bounties, and this actually works at beyond 70 as well when you're trying to gear up your character. But you can use this at earlier levels. Just use it when you're fighting mobs that you have more DPS than they have life, essentially. So if you're playing on normal difficulty and trying to kill things really quickly, it's great AoE, great setup, and the combination with Entangling Shot, Cold Awake helps you down elite packs pretty quickly. Otherwise, using it for doing bounties, it's a nice speed bounty farming setup. So those are the setups. Again, refer to the spreadsheet down below if you want to check out those different skill layouts. Otherwise, hopefully this has been helpful. I've had a lot of requests to do this, so if you have any questions, simply let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to help you out. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.